Hello, welcome to the third installment of the Master Class on Longevity, and where I'm sharing what I've learned and what I experienced when I spent a week in the blue zone of Sardinia. It was an amazing experience, and so far in part one we talked about movement, how important it is for us to move. I'm not talking about even exercising or joining a health club, but to make sure that we're active enough in our daily lives, which the centenarians and people in the blue zones are sort of forced to do so because they live in areas that are not flat. There's a lot of walking in their societies, or walking to their little markets for fruits, vegetables, whatever else they're going to be preparing. They do a lot of gardening. And the average person walks at least a couple of miles a day just in their daily lives. So we covered that in part one. In part two, we covered the diets of the centenarians and what they ate and what they don't eat. And I have to say, when I first landed in Sardinia and started up north in the island of Sardinia towards the small villages, what I really wanted to know was, what are these people eating? They must be eating some sort of special diet to be living so long. And I learned that that's really not the case at all. And that's covered in part two. Part three today is about social networking. And one thing that I was just astounded with is that no one in these small villages is really alone. And they're just born into a very strong social network, which we really don't have in the Western world, or the industrialized world, I should say. So people knew their neighbors, people cared about each other. I even noticed that there were keys in the doors of their homes. So they would close the door, they'd lock the door, but they left the key in there in case anyone wanted to come and visit, or if they needed help. It was extraordinarily safe there. Well, that can be accomplished when you're living in a small area, small village, and you know everyone. But what do we do in the industrialized societies? And how do we really build social networks, sometimes from nothing? Because we've come through the pandemic where we were forced to be isolated. And we've learned now that, as human beings, isolation is very negative about our health, and it's very, very important not to be isolated in order to stay healthy. So what are we going to do to build these social networks and to build relationships? I call it finding your tribe. We each have to find our tribe, and that doesn't mean to the exclusion of everything else and everyone else in our lives, but it's very important for us to find like-minded people that we can spend time with once in a while, whether it's doing something very active or not active, and to make sure that we understand ourselves enough so that we can go and find people that are like-minded. Today in our Western industrialized lives, many times family doesn't live close by, or we don't have family close by, or if they are, they may be busy with their own lives. Generations don't live together like they sometimes do in the blue zone. So it could be months, it could be across the country before you see, relatives. So how do we begin, even from that point, to start building these important relationships? So there's so many opportunities today, and I've heard from clients that I've counseled that they're lonely, they eat alone, they live alone, they walk alone. They really are looking for these relationships, and there's never been more opportunities. There's never been more opportunities even online, and yet it seems we are more isolated than ever. So in order to change this, we need to understand ourselves. What is it that we enjoy doing? And then to start pursuing opportunities that will put us with like-minded people. And something else that I've really discovered not too long ago is that sometimes it's not, forming these relationships is not even with another human being. It can be with nature. I watched a special not too long ago about the people in the Andes Mountains, and they have relationships with the trees. It may sound very strange in our society, but it's a relationship with nature that sometimes is our tribe, or sometimes it's a start. I will share a little story about myself where after hosting a trip, a lifestyle immersion trip to Italy this past spring, in May it was, I found myself back at home and spending a lot of time in my office and a lot of time doing consultations without, needing to move and staying isolated from everything else. So I started taking walks. I would stop during the middle of the day and I would just give myself some time to go down by the lake that we live by, close to Lake Michigan, and started just walking. And I was not only incorporating movement into my life, but I sort of formed a relationship with the lake. It was as if I was going to see an old friend, and it was giving me my best thinking time. So sometimes that's where we need to start. Another thing we can do is volunteer. Volunteer for a cause, volunteer for a place that we feel we can give back in life. And it doesn't have to be every single day, but there's never been a bigger need for helping one another. There are schools, there are associations, there are places that are really looking for us to communicate and to help and to give back. So those are some things that we can do. I'm also going to put a couple of links in the description about building your tribe that I think you may find useful. And I'll put a link in the description as well about, it has a link to a quiz, a little quiz that you can take to learn a little bit more about yourself and the kind of thinker that you are. And it will give you a little more of your own backstory as you go out to find your own tribe. I can't wait to hear about how it works for you. And if you want more information of this type, please subscribe to my channel because I will be able to continue to provide good, hopefully very useful information for you and all my subscribers. Thank you for stopping by.